Chapter 8. Emerald Morning. Dawn arrived like a held breath finally let go, a soft exhale of pearl-grey light that seeped through the filigreed screens and brushed the chamber's stone to palest gold. The city beyond was still hushed in that peculiar quiet that comes before bells and bustle, as if even the streets meant to honour the day. Alyssa watched dust motes drift like secret stars in a private cosmos, while Anne-Lena wrestled with the lacquered door of a wardrobe that, as ever, protested before it yielded. "You'd think," Anne-Lena muttered, "that for all the carving they put into this thing, someone might have spared a coin for a hinge-smith." Alyssa's answering smile was small and tremulous, and luminous for all that. She sat in the window seat, knees drawn up beneath the long white robe she had thrown on at waking. Already she seemed set apart from life in it, a ghost previewing herself. Her left hand rested over a small wooden jewellery box. "Still time to run," Anne-Lena added lightly over her shoulder. "There isn't," Alyssa said quietly. It was not despair. It was only true. The time to run was that night in the tavern when I couldn't keep my mind from undressing him. I was reckless and greedy. Her voice was barely a whisper, tinted with self-mockery. Anne-Lena scoffed. Dragons were not famed for good sense about the things they truly wanted. "It sounds as though you were lost the moment you laid eyes on him," she remarked, finally diving into the wardrobe now that the stubborn door was beaten. When she turned back, a dress was draped across her arms as though she were bearing a relic. A sweep of emerald silk so deep it went near black where it folded, flecked with faint traceries of silver thread that caught the morning and gave it back as crushed starlight. Alyssa's breath hitched. She slid from the window, bare feet whispering over the cool stone. "It is perfect," she whispered, gliding a reverent palm across it. "I had it made alongside my wedding dress," Anne-Lena said softly. "You were quite drunk the day you told me you would one day face somebody else's choice just like this. You said that for that day you wanted something that could be both a wedding dress and," she did not finish. "A shroud," Alyssa supplied, "and I said it for you." "Indeed." Anne-Lena laid the gown on the bed and smoothed it once with reverent fingers. "But I refused to accept that part of it." They dressed quickly, helping each other with the buttons and ties, until Anne-Lena stood finished in gleaming white. Then it was Alyssa's turn. "Arms up," Anne-Lena murmured, and Alyssa obeyed, lifting them so the emerald could spill down over her like a slow forest twilight coming on. The silk settled with a hush and moulded to her lines as though spun from choices she had yet to make. The sleeves fell past her hands in overlapping open panels that hung free and fluttered, like wings. Alyssa's heart warmed at the thought that had gone into the design. They stood before the tall mirror in its carved dark wood frame. Alyssa hardly knew the figure in it, the way the green deepened the dark warmth of her eyes and set a fire in them, the way it lent her skin an almost luminous life. The silver threads, veins of light, drew the gaze upward, to the open collar and the pulse beating at her throat. For now, at least. "It's beautiful," Alyssa whispered. "You are beautiful," Anne-Lena corrected. Her own dress was gleaming white, and she was adorned as befit a royal bride. That there was a riding outfit beneath the silk, in case she had to leave with no time to change, was nobody's business but theirs, and the reason they dressed without maids, free to have whatever private words they needed. Jewellery came next. A cascade of emerald drops for her ears, a slender torque of worked silver at the throat, shaped like unfurling dragon wings, delicate, powerful, latent. Anne-Lena fastened the clasp, her fingers pausing an extra heartbeat at Alyssa's nape. Then she set a silver circlet over hair that for once had decided to cooperate. "You should wear it up," Anne-Lena decided, lifting the circlet away and beginning to redo the work. "Let him see you fully." Alyssa swallowed, watching the mirror. "He will look at me and think only of the duty he has to do." "He will look at you," Anne-Lena said sharply, meeting her eyes in the glass, "and remember the price of holding on to that duty of his." Silence pooled while she worked. Outside, a bell tolled once, a reminder of the hour to them both. Anne-Lena replaced the circlet, satisfied. Alyssa stared at the transformed woman in the mirror. Anne-Lena, she whispered. I need you to promise me something. Anne-Lena nodded, wariness slipping in. Ask. If Alaris, the name thickened the air, if he chooses duty over me, if he ends it, I need you to forgive him, help him survive the severing. The bond will tear at him. I've felt the edges of it. Don't let him shatter for my sake. Anne-Lena's eyes darkened. I'm not sure I can promise that. I know you care for him. All I ask is that you keep that care intact. Alyssa's voice steadied. He'll be left carrying both the act and the ruin of it, inside him. I don't want my memory to become his destruction. If it does, then my death is wasted. I want him to live. Anne-Lena looked away. You ask a great deal of me. I ask for something you would want to give him anyway. Don't deny him your shoulder for my sake. A long exhale. I will try to help him, Anne-Lena said at last, each word reluctance hammered into a promise, whatever comes. But gods, Alyssa, do not offer him your death as if it were a gift. There are others who would mourn you, and badly. Alyssa's smile tasted of salt. There's more I need to ask of you. A soft snort. You're gathering favours like a magpie this morning. Please. Today it seems I can refuse you nothing, Anne-Lena muttered, and gentleness threaded through it. Alyssa went to the small carved box she had left on the window seat. Her fingers hesitated on the lid before she lifted it. From within, she drew a coil of silver that seemed inert until it met the air, and then faint runes ghosted along it, like breath on glass. It was shaped as a slender dragon, wings half-furled, tail looping back on itself. Anne-Lena's eyes widened. You finished it. Weeks ago, when the moon was right, Alyssa admitted, the old binding I wove around Kataran is as unstable as I am just now. You've seen the tremors in him. The focus holds the balance, but it needs a living conduit other than himself, someone who can feel the surge and gentle it. I've been the bearer. I can't be, much longer. I meant to pass it to you after the wedding regardless. Now, her voice thinned. I may not have an after. Anne-Lena reached out, then stopped. If you die while you're still his only focus, his control phrase, loss and grief, will make the surge worse. He could destroy himself, and this city with him. Alyssa lifted the bracelet toward her. Please, take it now. Anne-Lena's throat drew unbearably tight. You are not a thing to be parcelled out in preemptive legacies. And you are not permitted to let Kataran come apart because I clung to hope too long. Alyssa caught her wrist, warm, strong, and pressed the dragon coil to the skin. The silver liquefied, a quicksilver sigh, drawing tight, its seams sealing until nothing showed at all, only a faint coolness Anne-Lena felt sink inward, a distant thrum falling into step with her pulse. She gasped softly. I can feel him, she whispered, like a storm watched from a high cliff. Alyssa nodded. You'll learn him quickly. It's invisible now to any eye without dragoncraft. Even he won't know, unless you tell him. He'll know, Anne-Lena said. He's attuned to you, and he already knows he's bound to your control. I only hope I'm strong enough to hold him when you fall. The words were out before she could cage them. When, not if. Alyssa flinched. Anne-Lena shut her eyes a moment. I'm sorry. Don't be. Truth can't be denied. Anne-Lena took her hands and turned them over, studying the fine lines and the old scars left by a cursed shackle Alyssa had worn for an age, their marks fading now. Listen to me, she said quietly. Do not give up hope. Alaris might yet surprise you. A faint grin curved her mouth. He asked me yesterday what the price of choosing you would be. He'd not have asked if some part of him weren't already weighing it. Alyssa let the possibility sit between them, fragile and glimmering, a lantern lit in utter dark. Maybe, she echoed, but found the hope too large and too painful a thing to fit inside her chest and let it go again. They finished the last of the preparations. When they stood once more before the mirror, Alyssa looked like a woman holding both an ending and a beginning, and refusing to name either until the moment forced her to. Anne-Lena stood at her back, hands on her shoulders. Breathe, she whispered at her ear, her gaze gentling. Let the day come to you, Alyssa. Let it find you alive. Far down the corridor, a knock sounded, a summons rippling toward them, still a few doors off. Not yet. Alyssa turned and pressed her forehead to Anne Lenna's. "Thank you," she breathed. "For what?" "For letting me ask impossible things." Anne Lenna's hands tightened around hers. "Then may you live to repay the debt with possible ones." The knock drew nearer. Hearts braced, they turned, one toward the door, the other toward the balcony as noon climbed toward them and the hour came to claim what it was owed. Chapter 9. Choice at noon. They woke him when the sun was gilding the eastern roofs. Breakfast came with it. Dark bread still warm at the heart, soft cheese, slices of spiced pear, a side of ribs, a small dish of salt, a cup of watered wine. A generous meal. A considerate one. A farewell. Alaris ate because a body facing a fight should not be hollow. The flavour came dulled and distant, as though his tongue already belonged to a man remembered rather than living. When he finished, he set the cup aside with a care that felt like reverence for the ordinary. The guard came without comment, no sermon, no ghoulish curiosity, only the unspoken kindness of silence. Piece by piece the familiar weight closed over him, padded gambeson drawn tight, cuisses buckled, greaves, the breastplate that caught the torchlight in a hard, unwavering gleam. The old leather under his gauntlets cracked where it had moulded to his palms over years of grip and letting go. Last came the cloak, which he had not asked for and quietly declined. The man folded it back over his arm and nodded as though that too were a vow honoured. When they led him up, the world outside felt too large, the sky yawning cold and high, the air bright with a pre-noon clarity that knifed every edge sharp. The marriage bells had not yet begun. The city hummed instead with the murmurous tension of people who had risen early to witness a spectacle they assured their consciences they did not truly wish to see. The market square had been cleared. The red sandstone still held pockets of night chill. Along its edges the crowd pressed in orderly arcs, and the guards made a living palisade, their faces disciplined and quietly, terribly human. Above, the banners stirred, Katarin's weather sense apparently content to grant the day calm. Sleet was there, waiting at the prison door. She had been groomed until her hide shone, her mane combed out and loosely plaited with a thin green ribbon threaded through it. She blew out a slow breath when he came near, not the battle snort of anticipation but the measured exhale of an old companion, pretending this was only another road. He pressed his brow to the velvet between her eyes. "If I fall," he murmured, "see if you can't develop a taste for a magistrate's oats. They're kinder than court grooms. A flick of the ear, agreement, reprimand, farewell." He swung up and was led to the square and then around it in a slow ceremonial circle, so every watching eye could fix the knight who had come to kill the dragon and steal the bride. Then he dismounted within the chalked ring and drew his sword with a long, clean whisper that seemed indecent in the quiet. He set himself, feet rooted, blade upright before his face, the steel's spine against the vertical line of his knuckles, a posture more liturgy than readiness. A theatre of intent. Waiting carved the long seconds into thin, sharp shards. Then the crowd exhaled as one. A shadow slid across the sun, emerald and immense, a moving continent of scale and muscle. Wind struck the square in a spiralling downdraft that lifted cloaks and snatched at veils. Alaris closed his eyes for one heartbeat, the length of an old prayer, and opened them to a sight every fireside song he had ever heard had failed to prepare him for. She circled once, not the narrowing of a predator, but a slow right, following the path Sleet had taken, only in the other direction, claiming the space and all within it. Blessing or warning, he could not tell which. When she came down directly across from him, the flagstones thrummed under the weight of so much living mass. Talons curled, then settled. Her head lowered, and those impossible many-faceted eyes levelled at him across the ring. Sadness lived there, no rage, no heat hunger, a grief already rehearsing itself. It undid him more thoroughly than any roar could have. His arms moved on their own training, setting the sword from guard to ready, the tip angling a fraction toward the soft plates of the throat, where even dragon scale thinned. She inhaled. Emerald fire rippled, not outward, but inward. The shape folded, the architecture of wing and sinew collapsing through impossible geometry. Light chased along contracting ridges. Scale rethreaded itself into silk. Where the dragon had crouched there stood now a woman robed in green so deeply worked with fine metallic thread that each small movement answered the sun with a quiet constellation. Her hair, an untamable riot, forced to submit for one morning, was coiled and pinned beneath a circlet of silver wrought like interlaced wings. The torque at her throat shone frost-pale against her skin. Her bare hands hung loose at her sides, the open sleeves still fluttering from the motion of the shift. Elissa. The name came to him hot and tearing, ripping at his resolve with an unexpected brutality. Her gaze took in every inch of him with the slow, engraving care of a farewell. Then, deliberately, she stepped forward, crossing the wide stone plain of the square without haste, her hands clasped regally before her, the crowd's breath hitching audibly as she passed some invisible threshold. She stopped exactly where a single committed thrust would end her, not a finger's breadth nearer, not one safer pace away. She looked up, letting the proud line of her throat lengthen, her chin lifting. Then, in a gesture older than guild or crown, she closed her eyes, let her hands fall open at her sides, and made no move at all to guard the life beating there. The square fell into a silence so complete he could hear absurdly the soft leather creak of his own gauntlet. "This is mercy," part of him recited. "Clean, swift. End the tension. Free you both of the tearing halves of the choice. Finish the king's quest. Release the princess from spectacle. Keep your honor." Another voice, quiet all his life, and never once silent, answered. "Honor bound you years ago, the day you rewrote the scribe's neat oath and swore it before the whole court. Do not forget it. Your oath in the end was not to the king, nor to the crown, but to her, the princess, to serve and protect her, and her alone." Whichever courtier had laughed that day was not here now. Nor was the king's fury. The morning he understood that when his daughter was given to another in marriage, his loyalty would walk out the gate with the bride. And so all that was left to decide was how he was to serve her, here, now, in this impossible wreck of a heart and mind at war with each other. He levelled the blade at her throat. Steel touched skin, so slight a pressure that he felt the tremor of her pulse pass into the blade and travel up into his bones like the first humming note of a plucked string. She did not flinch. Something in him, thin, worn through by years of translating duty into obedience, gave way cleanly, painlessly, like ice letting go under a spring thaw. It did not feel like failure. It felt like the first true alignment of the vows he had spoken with the vows he had lived. She had ordered him to listen to his heart, and for once he did. "I'm yours," he breathed, barely the shape of sound, the whole of him surrendered in it. The sword flung aside fell. It rang against the stone, bright and sharp, an ending to the standoff loud enough for all of them. His gauntleted fingers tore at the strap of his helmet. It came free and he let it roll away with another clang as he moved. In the narrow fraction before anything else, he saw her lashes flick up, confusion sparking, then the dawning peril of hope. He closed the space between them in a single deliberate step, and with the ungainly urgency of a drowning man seizing the only solid thing in reach, pressed his mouth to hers. The bond did not so much ignite as recognize itself. Heat, not burning, flooded him. A green-gold surge that left him for a moment blind to crowd and square and sky. Her hands, that had hung at her sides in ritual stillness, rose and caught the edge of his armour at the collar, not to push him off but to anchor him harder into the choice. Her answering sound was half sob, half exultation, dragon and woman braided into a single breath. The square erupted. It was not the keening of a mob robbed of its blood sport. It was a roar of unlooked-for delight. Cheers broke like surf against the ring of guards. A flower, some early pale mountain bloom, arced up and fell, glancing off his shoulder plate and tumbling away in a small white spill. A hawker's laugh carried over the din. Somewhere a child's high voice squealed. She chose him, at once corrected by another. He chose her. They parted only far enough to breathe. He kept his forehead against hers while the world rearranged itself around the new fact of them. "Was it dramatic enough for you, my dear?" he whispered, his voice raw silk. Fire flashed in her eyes. Amusement and relief and a feral possessiveness warred there and made their peace. "No," she managed, her voice shaking, and even now unable to grant him the win. "You could have stretched that moment out a little more." The jab came with tears still glittering on her lashes.